Namaste. Welcome everyone to the second evening of the Ramayana readings. Yesterday we were only streaming on Instagram, and tonight we are also on YouTube. And many friends have asked me to actually start over again. I'm not going to start all the way over. I'm going to leave the introduction of the Ramayana explaining the book. Look on Wikipedia. It's worthwhile looking into the background also of the Ramayana. And I'll also skip the part that I read yesterday about the first poet, the writer of the Ramayana, the first poem. And Valmiki is the writer of the Ramayana, and there's also a beautiful story how he turned into a saint. So tonight I'm going to start with the first chapter of the Ramayana, Balakanda, and that is the chapter of birth and boyhood. And then we also get into the second chapter after that, hopefully. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, in the beautiful land of Kosala, on the banks of the river Sarayu, was situated the magnificent town of Ayodhya. Ruled by the wise and the just king called Dasarat, belonging to the solar dynasty in the lineage of Ikshvaku. King Dasarat had only one sorrow, and that was that he had no son to carry on his line. As he was brooding over this, his guru, the sage Vasishta, told him to perform a special puja. It was also at this time that the gods approached Brahma and begged him to ask Lord Vishnu on their behalf to kill the demon king, Ravana, who was harassing them. Lord Vishnu agreed to descend to earth, taking on 4 different forms as the 4 sons of Dasarath. At that very moment, King Dasarath, who had just successfully completed his puja, saw coming out of the sacrificial fire appearing a striking figure of a divine kind, carrying a golden vessel containing an ambrosial fluid of rice, milk, and honey. The celestial being handed the vessel over to the king and told him to give it to his 3 queens. The king gave half of this nectar-like sweet to his eldest wife, Kausalya. He divided the remaining half into 2 portions and gave 1 portion to his second wife, Sumitra. The remaining quarter he split into 2 and gave 1 part to his third wife, Kaikeyi, and the remainder again to Sumitra. As soon as they ate the pudding, the queens became pregnant with the spirit of Lord Narayana. In course of time, they gave birth to 4 sons. The first to be born was Kausalya's son, Rama. Next, Kaikeyi, the youngest queen, gave birth to Bharata. And finally, the second wife, Sumitra, delivered twins who were called Lakshman and Shatrugna. The king's joy knew no bound. The city of Ayodhya went crazy with joy. As the children grew up, they were given all the training necessary for royal princes. Their guru was the great sage Vasishta. Even as a child, Rama exhibited extraordinary powers of intellect, as well as great nobility of character. Lakshman followed Rama like a shadow and could not bear to be parted from him for even a minute. At some point in their youth, Rama wishes to go on a pilgrimage around the Holy Land of India. And his father, King Dasarath, was pleased to grant his request, and so the 4 brothers went on a tour. After his return, his father and brothers noticed a great change in Rama. He no longer took delight in the various sports and pastimes of his brothers, shunned all social contact, and even refused to eat. He became very pale. At this time, it so happened that the sage Vishvamitra came to the court with a request. The king assured the sage that his wish would certainly be granted. Vishvamitra then asked Dasarath to send his son Rama to kill the 2 demons, Marija and Subahu, who were disturbing his ashram. The king was stunned to hear this request, and he feared for the safety of his son, who was only 16 years of age. He offered to send his entire army to help the sage, or even to come himself, but the sage refused for he said that Rama alone had the power to kill the demons. At last, urged by his own guru Vasishta, who reminded him that he gave his word, Dasarath reluctantly gave his consent and ordered an attendant to fetch Rama. The attendant came back and gave the news that ever since his return from the pilgrimage, the prince had been strangely lethargic. He seemed to have no more hope and no desire, and attached to nothing. Hearing this, Vishvamitra said, "His condition is not the result of delusion, but the result of wisdom and dispassion, leading to enlightenment. Let him be brought to the court." Rama came to the assembly hall and bowed to his father and the sages. His loving father asked him, "My dear child, why have you become so sad when you have everything in life? Who has harmed you? What has happened to you?" Rama replied, "During my recent pilgrimage through this holy land of ours, I saw many sights which I had never seen before. Agony and suffering did I see, and poverty, disease, and death. A new kind of thought has taken hold of me. What happiness can we have from this ever-changing world? All beings take birth only to die, and die only to be born again. How can this suffering come to an end? My heart bleeds with sorrow. I do not feel like eating or sleeping, unless I have an answer to these questions." Guru Vasishta, who is also present, proceeds to instruct Rama on the knowledge of the soul, the Atma, and on knowledge of Brahman, the formless Supreme. And this discourse came to be known as the Yoga Vasishta. This is a very important book also to read if you're interested in yoga. So this was how Rama, at the tender age of 16, became a truly liberated being, caring not for the pursuit of personal happiness, but only for the pursuit of righteousness. For he realized that only in Dharma could a person find eternal bliss. At the end of the discourse, Rama's father gave him permission to accompany Vishvamitra and accomplish whatever the sage had in mind. Lakshman followed. When they reached the river bank, Vishvamitra gave the two of them 2 mantras which would make them invincible and which would protect them from all fatigue and hunger. Vishvamitra also gave Rama many powerful missiles by which he could defeat all enemies. So they end up defeating the 2 demons, Maricha and Subahu. And after they've done that, Vishvamitra decides to take them to the town of Mithila, where King Janaka rules. And King Janaka is the father of Sita. Now Sita was adopted by the king, and this is the story how she was adopted. Once when the king had been ploughing the ground for a puja, he heard the gurgling chuckle of a baby. He stopped the plough just in time and found a beautiful baby girl in the furrow. He gathered her up tenderly and decided to adopt her, for she was so charming. He called her Sita, which means a furrow. So furrow or Sita is also related to earth. Right? She really came from Mother Nature. So the king has promised Sita to the man who can break the bow of Shiva. He has the bow of Shiva there, and it is huge and heavy, and no one can actually lift it. But the king one time saw Sita as a very young girl playing with a ball, and he was astonished to find the child effortlessly, without any effort, lifting the bow herself, right, to get the ball back. So he decided at that moment that, if any man aspired for his daughter's hand, he would also have to be able to lift this bow, to bend it and string it. Many princes had come to try their luck and had gone away disappointed. And Vishwamitra knew that Rama was the one to wed Sita, and that is why he took him to Mithila. As they entered the palace gates, Rama's gaze was drawn to an open window in the palace, through which he could see the head of a young girl. As if drawn by his look, she turned and looked straight into his eyes. So intense was her gaze that he felt as if he had received an electric shock. His heart left him forever and flew into her eyes. She also knew that in him she had found her life partner. The boys walked on, and the girl kept hoping with all her might that he would be able to bend the bow and marry her, for she was none other than Sita, the adopted daughter of King Janaka. Sometimes she's also called Janaki. So Vishwamitra and the princes were welcomed by King Janaka with great joy. And Vishwamitra assures him that Rama, the son of Dasarath, would easily bend the bow. 5,000 able-bodied men were needed to carry the chest containing the bow into the hall. The lid was opened, and the bow was revealed to everyone. Urged by Vishwamitra, Rama took up the gigantic bow as if it was a mere toy and bent it till it broke. There was a thunderous noise, like the breaking apart of a mountain. Everyone gazed at Rama in wonder. The king was delighted, for he had almost despaired of finding a husband for his daughter. He immediately sent speedy messengers to Ayodhya to invite Dasarath to his son's wedding. And Dasarath arrives with also Bharata and Shatrughna, the other two sons, and actually all four sons, they get married into the same family. This all happens at an auspicious hour, and Yoga Vasishta begins the ceremony with the recitation of the sacred marriage mantras given in the Rig Veda. Clasping the hand of his bride, Rama led her 3 times around the sacred fire, thus pledging his love. The wedding took place with great pomp and style. And after the wedding they all go back to Ayodhya, and the time that follows, the next 12 years, Rama and Sita delight in each other's company. Sita was as good as she was beautiful, and Rama came to love her even more for her nobility of character than for her charm and beauty. Their love for each other grew with every passing day, and they couldn't bear to be parted for even a moment. Thus the days and the months passed like minutes for the radiant couple, and time ceased to exist while they gazed into each other's lotus petal eyes. That was the end of the first book, Balakanda, Birth and Boyhood. The second book is called Ayodhya Kanda, the book of Ayodhya. For 12 years after his marriage, Rama led a carefree life, enjoying the company of his charming wife and learning to handle the various affairs of state. It was at this time that Kaikeyi's brother, Kaikeyi is the youngest queen, it was at this time that Kaikeyi's brother came to take Bharata, her son, along with Shatrughna for a holiday to his house. Seeing his son Rama so full of noble qualities, King Dasarath felt at the same time that it was his duty to install Rama as king as soon as possible, for he himself was getting weak and old. Having decided on this, he was in a desperate hurry to accomplish it. He consulted his ministers to decide on a good day to crown his son Rama as king. And the most auspicious time was chosen by the astrologers. This happened to be the next day. So King Dasarath turns to his guru Vasishta and asks him to get everything ready for the installation on the following morning, for the function was to start at the break of dawn. King Dasarath is also anxious that Rama's installation takes place without any delay, because he also remembers that at the time that he married Kaikeyi, the youngest queen, he had promised her father that Kaikeyi's son would become king after him. So he kind of forgot. He was frightened that if Bharata happened to be present at the time of the installation, he might demand his rights. News of the impending coronation had spread like wildfire, and people from all over the suburbs started pouring into the city of Ayodhya, excited at the event to which everyone looked forward with great joy, since Rama was loved by all. Kaikeyi was the king's youngest and favorite wife. When she came to Ayodhya, she was accompanied by her maid, a hunchback called Mantara, who had been selected to look after her interests. That evening, Mantara was quite astonished to see the city decorated so quickly, as if for a big occasion. Seeing Rama's old nurse standing nearby, Mantara asked, "Why has the city of Ayodhya gone mad with joy overnight? What is the special event?" The nurse gave her the news of the impending installation. Hearing this, Mantara was shocked and rushed to her mistress, who was relaxing in bed. "Rise up, O deluded queen," she said. "Your husband, who professes to love you, has cheated you. Having sent your son away to his grandparents, he is now set on crowning Kausalya's son, Rama, as king. Tomorrow." Kaikeyi rose up, filled with delight at the news of Rama's impending installation. She presented Mantara with a beautiful jewel, since she was the first to bring the good news to her, and said, "Thank you for letting me know this. In my eyes, there is no difference between Rama and Bharata. I am delighted with the king's decision." Mantara, however, was shocked at Kaikeyi's reception of the news. She threw away the jewel and spoke in a scornful tone. "I cannot believe that you can be so blind to the misfortune that is to befall you. Once Rama becomes king, you will only be a maid to Kausalya, and your son too will be degraded to a servant to Rama." At last, after listening to her for a full hour, Kaikeyi also began to believe that all that Mantara said was actually true, and the king had indeed plotted to deprive her son of his lawful position. This shows us how important it is to keep the company of noble people. This is why there is so much emphasis in scripture on the value of satsang. Once we start mixing with wicked people, even the most elevated mind will slowly sink down to their poisonous insinuations. At last, the agitated Kaikeyi begged Mantara to tell her how she could save her son from this misfortune which was to overtake him. Mantara reminded her of the two boons which Dasarath had promised her long, long ago, for having saved his life. She had always kept the offer open and almost forgot about them. Mantara now reminded her of these two boons and asked her to demand firstly that Bharata be crowned king, and second, that Rama be banished for 14 years to the forest, which would be enough time for Bharata to consolidate his position in the country. Mantara advised the queen to enter the apartment specially reserved for sulking wives, and lie there with her hair like all loose and torn clothes, indicating to her husband an unhappy state of her mind. Kaikeyi proceeded to carry out all her orders. Her own good sense completely vanished. At nightfall, the king entered Kaikeyi's chamber, eager to share the news of the forthcoming event with his favorite wife. And he doesn't find her there, and he hears that she is waiting for him in the sulking chamber. So he hurries to the room and is horrified to see his wife on the floor with jewels scattered everywhere, and her hair unkempt and her face dark with anger. "What is it, my dear one?" the old king inquired in distress. And the king places her head on his lap and swears that he would grant her whatever she wishes. The queen, knowing full well what effect her request would have on him, cruelly spoke the following words, as prompted by Mantara. "O king, do you remember the time when I saved your life in the war and guarded you till you regained consciousness? At that time you promised me 2 boons. The time is now ripe to redeem your pledge. I request you to install my son Bharata as the king and to banish Rama to the forest for 14 years. These are my 2 wishes, and if you do not grant them, you will be proving yourself a traitor to the noble family into which you have been born, and will be guilty of the great sin of breaking your word." The king couldn't believe that he was hearing such cruelty coming from his beloved's mouth. Unable to bear the anguish which her words had caused him, he fainted. Coming out of his swoon at last, the king said, "What has possessed you, O wicked woman, to ask for such terrible boons? What has the innocent Rama ever done to you? Why are you bent on ruining him, as well as this noble race? You know full well that I cannot continue to live without seeing Rama, even for a day. Are you bent on killing your husband as well? What demon has possessed you, O Kaikai? I beg of you, I will fall at your feet, but please spare me from going against my word, for I cannot agree to this most terrible request." Thus saying, the agonized king fell at her feet. But the queen, whose good sense had been completely stilled by the wicked words of Mantara, cruelly said, How can you break your word to me, not once, but twice? For you not only gave me your word at that time, but also just now. Shame on you, that you have no pride in your status as a king. The night passed, and the auspicious day on which the installation was to take place had dawned. Sage Vasishta entered the city and requested the minister Sumantra to apprise the king of his arrival. Sumantra was astonished to see the king on the floor and Kaikei sitting beside him. She ordered Sumantra to go and get Rama. Sumantra left immediately and brought Rama back to the king's chamber. As the chariot with Rama and Lakshman seated within passed through the streets, Rama was hailed on all sides and showered with flowers and jewels. Entering the royal palace, Rama bowed before the dejected king and Kaikei. He was surprised to see his father, who was usually so happy to see him, sitting with eyes cast down. Have I caused you any unhappiness, O father? In what way have I displeased you? He asked. The king couldn't speak or even raise his eyes to look at him. Kaikei said, The king is neither angry nor is he displeased with you. He is unhappy because he does not wish to keep the promise he gave me long ago. It is your duty as an obedient and a loving son to see that your father doesn't break his word. Rama was astonished to hear this and said, "How can my father doubt that I wouldn't obey his command? I would jump into the fire if he so ordered me." Kaikeyi now spoke again. "Well now, know this. The two boons I have asked for are these: that my son, Bharata, should be installed as king in your place, and that you should be banished to the forest for 14 years. Your father cannot bear to carry out these wishes of mine, and that is why he has such a sorrowful look and refuses to look at you." Not by a flicker of an eyelid did Rama betray the fact that the news was a great shock to him. He showed no anger or hatred. In an even voice he said, "How can you doubt, O Kaikeyi, that I would be disobedient to my father's wishes, even though I have not heard this command from his own lips? Yet your wish is my command. Just give me time to take leave of my mother, Kausalya, and of Sita, and I shall do your bidding and go to the forest with matted locks this very day, as desired by you." So saying, Rama backed out of the room. The agonized king was choking with grief and couldn't utter a word. Rama walked out of the palace without a backward glance. Nothing in his behavior gave an inkling to his waiting friends and the citizens of the shocking news which he had just received. Waving aside the white umbrella and fan of royalty, he walked into his mother's apartments, in complete control of himself and his emotions, a master yogi, who had risen above all the pairs of opposites. Rama entered his mother's apartments and saw her seated for puja. She rushed to greet him, embracing him fondly and offering him a seat. Rama was sad at having to upset his mother, but there was no way of breaking the news gently to her. "Oh, mother," he said, "I fear I have to give you some bad news. This jeweled throne is not for me. By my father's orders, I am to proceed directly to Dandaka forest, existing on fruits and roots for the next 14 years, while Bharata rules in my stead." Hearing the shocking news, Kausalya fell to the ground. "Oh, my beloved son, can I be hearing aright? Can the king give such a shameless order? How can I live without you? I will not stay here. I will follow you as a mother cow follows her calf." Rama spoke to his mother. "O noble lady, please try to understand that I cannot disobey the command of my father, even if it brings grief to you and to me. Our land is filled with stories of great men who were ready to carry out any order. It is my duty as a son to do this. Moreover, I have already given my word to Mother Kaikei and will not back out of it. It is your duty to bless me and give me leave to carry out my duty. After 14 years in the forest, I shall return. Even after he said this, Kausalya wept and begged him not to go. But time was running out, and Rama was getting impatient to leave. He says to his brother, Lakshman, who is very angry, "Curb your anger against my father and Kaikei, and be joyful." Without wasting any more time, see that everything is ready for my departure to the forest. See to it that Kaikei's mind is not in the least agitated by the fear that I shall back out of my promise. I hold nothing against her. It is fate alone which has decreed that I should go to the forest and that the kingdom should have been snatched from me at the last moment. Kaikei and Mantara are only instruments in the hand of Providence. How else could my gentle mother, Kaikei, ever have conceived of such an idea? To the best of my knowledge, I have never offended her at any time. A degree of providence cannot be set aside by anyone. Joy and sorrow, fear and anger, gain and loss, birth and death will all come in their time. An individual who comes under the sway of these pairs of opposites will always be unhappy. Only he who can surmount the pain and pleasure caused by them can be called a man of enlightenment. Despite the shock which I received this morning, I feel no agony and no anger. To me, it makes no difference if kingship or exile falls to my lot. Kausalya realized that Rama was firm in his resolve and could not be shaken, and she said, "I see that you will not waver from your high resolve, and therefore I give you my blessings. Let good befall you at all times, my beloved son. Destiny is all-powerful and cannot be averted. As for me, I shall have no peace of mind until I see you return, safe and sound. May that Dharma which you follow protect you. May your path be smooth. Depart happily, my son, and return safely, protected as you are on all sides by my constant prayers." So saying, Kausalya controlled her grief and blessed Rama, who fell at her feet. Rama now proceeded to his own palace to give the unwelcome news to his wife. Sita was waiting joyfully for the arrival of her husband. She was shocked to see him come alone, looking pale, for he wasn't sure how to break the news to his dear wife. "What is troubling you?" she asked. Rama briefly told her the whole story of his father's promise to Kaikei and of his banishment to the forest, and Kaikeyi's demand that her son Bharata should be installed as king. It is your duty, my dear wife, to stay with my mother and look after her, as well as your father-in-law. Hearing Rama's words, Sita couldn't bear the thought of separation from her beloved husband and spoke forcefully. I shall follow you wherever you go, my darling. Heaven itself has no charm for me without you. I assure you that I shall not be a burden on you. We shall delight in each other's company and rejoice in the beauty of nature. Rama said to her, my dearest wife, you are a tender and frail princess, totally unfit for life in the harsh jungle. There will be none of the delicacies which you have been used to, and no one to wait upon you. You cannot imagine such an existence. None of this could deter Sita from her firm resolve. I cannot live even for a minute without you, my dearest love. If you refuse to take me, I will take poison and give up my life here and now in front of your eyes. Nothing can deter me from my resolve to follow you, so please don't waste your time. Rama was actually delighted to hear her words. He had been dreading the thought of parting from her, and now that she was so adamant in her resolve to accompany him, he gave in gladly. Folding his agitated wife in his arms, Rama spoke soothingly to her and kissed away her tears. Oh Janaki, I tried to stop you, not because I wanted to leave you, but only because it was my duty to point out to you the dangers of forest life. You know that I cannot bear to cause any distress to you, my lovely princess. O beloved Sita, heaven has no charm for me, either without you. Heaven has no charm for me without your bewitching presence. I too would love to frolic with you in the woods. So make haste and give away all your jewels and prepare yourself for a long journey with me. Sita was overjoyed that Rama agreed. Lakshman, who had been listening to this dialogue between Rama and Sita, couldn't bear the thought of being separated from him as well, and said to Rama, "O brother, I cannot remain in Ayodhya without you. I will go with you and clear the path for both of you so that you can blissfully enjoy the beauty of the forest. Bharata will look after both our mothers as if they were his own. Shatrughna will be there also to help him, so have no fear. Kindly take me as your attendant. I will bring a sword and spade and my bow and arrow, and I will stand guard over you and Sita day and night. Please do not stop me from coming with you, my dear brother, for my mind is made up." Rama knew it was useless to try, so he agreed to take him. I see it is 10 minutes to 10, and I don't think we're going to make it through a whole other chapter. So So we're going to, I'm going to keep it a cliffhanger, and the chapter about the banishment is for tomorrow. I'm going to finish with singing to you a lullaby, and it is one of the favorite chants of Gandhi also. Those who hear or listen to this story of Rama will be saved from all misfortune. It grants a long life, victory, and power. Those who read it with faith will get dharma, righteousness, artha, wealth, kama, the fulfillment of desire, and moksha, liberation. May all be healthy. May all be at peace with each other. May all be fulfilled. May all be auspicious. Let all be happy. Let all be free from pain. Let all see reality everywhere. Let none have sorrow. Om Shanti.